I'd like to introduce you to Brendan Mooney, who might turn on his webcam. Brendan is the EU Programme Executive with the Northern and Western Regional Assembly, and he's also the national contact point for the Northern Periphery and Arctic Programme, and also the Atlantic Area Programme. And Brendan is going to take us through a presentation which will give us an update on the future of these programmes. So I'll hand over to you now, Brendan.
Thanks very much, Rose, and thanks again. Just to follow on from what Derva said, just to thank to Rose, Alice, Catherine and Karen and the team for organising this event, because it's a great opportunity to meet with those in practice, those that are using European funding as mechanisms to help us design and develop and create new programs into the future that will suit your needs. Perfect. Okay, so this morning I'm going to speak to you on European funding, the priorities. We'll have a look at the current program the current programs that are closing down and the priorities, and then just have a look at two different programs that I work on, which is the Northern Periphery and Arctic program and the Atlantic Area program, and just go into the specifics of where the Commission have given guidance on where they would like to see those programs focus their monies in the next program period, and maybe a bit of insight into the actual where they are going to do that, because we're currently in the task force at the minute designing and developing the new programs. I've one project example at the end that I think is a nice project, and it will be similar to the style projects in one of the priorities, and I'd just like to go through that project with you as well. So as I said, my name is Brendan Mooney. I'm from the Northern Western Regional Assembly. We're a sister organisation of the Southern Regional Assembly. Sorry, I'm just waiting for my slides to move forward. There we go. And what we say we do, we try and do three things. We do lots more than three things, but we try to, in a succinct way, to say what we do. And Derva has kind of touched on it already, but we have the remit of the regional spatial economic strategy. So we would have, like our colleagues in the Southern Region Assembly, drafted and got approved in the last year the regional spatial economic strategy, which is aligned with the Ireland 2040 plan. We also enhance our competitiveness by trying to draw down and optimize as much national and EU funding for our region. And finally, we do things like the Southern Region Assembly are doing here today. We act as a platform for collaboration. So we assist our local authorities, our universities, our IoTs, our stakeholders in the region, the support agencies for business, to get involved in Europe, to get involved in European funding, help them create partnerships, and help them share knowledge of calls, and try and get them engaged with the different European programs that are available out there. So over the current program, Europe runs its programs on 7-year periods. So the current program is the 2014-2020 period. That period had 11 priorities, so the focus of the different programs would have weighed heavily on a number of these priorities, mainly the ones on the left: research and innovation, information communication, competitiveness of SMEs, low carbon economy. But the different programs would have fed into these priorities or drawn from these priorities, depending on the style of program that it was. But these 11 priorities have been refined for the next program period. So the next program period that we're currently moving into is the 2021 to 2027 priorities programs, and the 11 priorities here have been refined to 5 priorities. The 5 priorities are a smarter Europe, a greener, low carbon Europe, a more connected Europe, and a more social Europe, and Europe closer to its citizens. Now, the programs that I'm involved in, which are ETC-based programs or Interreg programs, there is a heavy weighting towards the greener, low carbon Europe. So, you know, the direction coming from Europe, and I'll go into it in more detail in my next few slides. The direction coming from Europe is that the ETC programs, particularly the Northern Periphery and Arctic, the Atlantic Area program, will heavily weight their budget to address the greener low carbon Europe. Now, Alice has a poll which she's going to run now, just to get a feel for the top 3 of those 5 of where you would like to see us negotiate on your behalf on where you would like to see your projects funded through which priority. So we might just give you a chance to click on your top 3 teams there, and we can see the results as they come in. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, we'll just give it another couple of seconds before we move on. So obviously the priorities there, we'll look at the poll towards the end. But the priorities there are very broad stroke priorities. So smarter Europe, a greener Europe, they're quite broad stroke. So the Commission have given more detail and what would be known as specific objectives. So they are under each priority, what the more detail, the more focus on what the program will focus on. So the Smarter Europe, the specific objectives are about enhancing research and innovation. Specific objective number 2 is reaping the benefits of digitization for citizens. Specific objective number 3 is enhancing growth and competitiveness of SMEs. And specific objective number 4 is developing skills for smart specialization, industrial transition and entrepreneurship. Just think my slides have frozen again here. But there we go. So the programs now are currently looking at which of these specific objectives they will focus in on, and you might see some similarities here on the old program. So a lot of the old programs would have focused on entrepreneurship and innovation, and a lot of those style projects I feel will fit in under the Smarter Europe program through these specific objectives. And just then going on to the next priority, which is a greener Europe, and that's about promoting energy efficiency measures, promoting renewable energy, developing smart energy systems, grid storage and local level, promoting climate change adaptation, skills prevention, disaster resilience, promoting sustainable water management, promoting the transition of the circular economy, and enhancing biodiversity. Again, my slides seem to, I don't know if anyone else can forward. Yeah, there we go. So the priorities there, you can see the more detail of the focus. So again, and I'll go through it in more detail in a moment, but the Northern Periphery and Arctic and the Atlantic area, and indeed all ETC programs, would have got what are known as orientation papers from the Commission. The orientation papers would go through where the Commission feels the focus of the program should look at into the future. It goes through the geography, which we'll mention also, but the focus really on the Northern Periphery and Arctic and Atlantic area, and indeed a number of programs, they are heavily weighted towards this greener Europe. So if you have projects that you feel fit under some of these specific objectives or in the greener Europe theme, now is a good time to start planning, developing them, looking at creating a partnership, looking at creating that triple helix or quadra-helix partnership with, the academic world, the legislative world, the local authorities, the SMEs, and so on. My slides will be shared, so I don't plan on going through each of the priorities, because some of the priorities aren't necessarily going to be the focus of ETC funding and will be focused, or Interreg funding, but will be supported through other mechanisms. The More Connected Europe, the next slide, if you just move on there, somebody can just move on. That really, I can't see too much focus from an Interreg point of view on a More Connected Europe. These are larger scale projects, infrastructural projects, which aren't the focus of Interreg. The next priority is the More Social Europe. Again, if somebody can just move on to the next slide, the More Social Europe again is more ESF funding rather than Interreg funding. And finally, P5, the next slide, is a Europe closer to its citizens. I can see a small amount of Interreg European funding coming in under this priority. Interreg also, it's kind of different than other types of programs. The Commission have given what is known as Interreg specific priorities. So just if you move on to the next slide, and the Interreg specific projects, they are priority is where the Commission have asked each programme to set aside 10 to 15% of their budget to focus on better cooperation and governance, so enhancing institutional capacity of public authorities and stakeholders to implement macro-regional strategies and sea-basin strategies, as well as other territorial strategies. So it's about helping organisations and the actors, particularly, I'd say universities, local authorities, regional assemblies, about providing funding to help implement European macro and sea basin strategies. From the early negotiations that I've been involved in, it's specific objective number 1 that I think most of the funding here will be developed. So just moving on to the next slide. My area of expertise, or where I work on, is in European territorial cooperation funding, and I believe a lot of the participants today are on this session work already in Interreg, but ETC, also known as Interreg, is one of the 2 goals of cohesion policy and provides a framework for implementation of joint actions and policy exchanges between national, regional, local actors from different member states. The overarching objective of ETC is to promote a harmonious economic, social and territorial development of the Union as a whole. And as you know, Interreg is built around 3 strands, Interreg A, B and C. And just moving on to the next slide, this is an overview of the 2014-2020 programme. Not an awful lot is going to change in this programme in relation to the geographies of the projects and the number of programmes. So Interreg A is the cross-border programme. And I know I'm talking to colleagues from the more southern counties today, but you would have read in the paper that one of the early wins in Brexit, if there was ever a win in Brexit, was the fact that Peace Plus was agreed and supported by the British government, the UK government and the European Commission. And Peace Plus is an Interreg A programme, a cross-border programme. Then we have Interreg B. There are 15 Interreg B programmes. Touch on those in a minute. And then Interreg C, there are 4 Interreg C programs. There was talk of this being reduced to 1 or 2, but it's looking like there will be 4 programs in the next period. The one that most of you probably will know about, or the 2 main ones, would be URBACT and Interreg Europe. Interreg Europe is a policy-based program. It's a program that lets organizations work together to influence local, regional, national and European strategies and legislation. And then the next slide just shows you the 15 Interreg B programs. So Interreg B programs are transnational cooperation programs. They typically group together regions and countries that have common challenges and use the ETC model, the cooperation model, the shared learning model, the working together as a partnership to work on common challenges, to come up with solutions for the areas. So as an Irish partner, you have access to 3 of those programs. Northwest Europe, which is the national contact point, is based in the Southern Region Assembly, and then you have Atlantic Area and Northern Periphery and Arctic, for which I am the national contact point. Just the next slide is the current program in Northern Periphery and Arctic. Northern Periphery and Arctic is the program area in the current program is the west coast of Ireland, so it's Donegal down to Cork, including all the counties that harbour or touch the Atlantic seaboard. Looking north, all of Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Faroe Islands, Greenland and Iceland are the program area for the Northern Periphery and Arctic. The current program had 4 priorities: innovation, entrepreneurship, energy efficiencies and the natural and cultural heritage. And just going on to the next slide, I mentioned earlier on that the commission issue what is known as orientation papers. So the orientation paper that came from the Commission for the Northern Periphery and Arctic program asked the program to focus 85% of its funding in P2. P2 is the Greener Europe, with 15% the remaining budget on the Interreg specific objective. Now I know from negotiations that won't, the orientation papers, we aren't they aren't set in stone, they aren't legislative. They are just a guide, but you know, we would need good justification to move too far away from them. The negotiations currently between member states is looking like that. Absolutely, the P2 will be the main focus of the program, but there will be some focus on P1, a smarter Europe also. And that's good. I think we cannot completely focus all the monies on all the programs on the green agenda. We need to look at smart solutions, on smart specialization. We need to look at digitalization. We need to provide supports for SMEs and entrepreneurship and innovation as well. And P1, I feel, is the best home for that style of support. Just moving on then to the other program that I look after, Atlantic Area. Atlantic Area is a larger program than MPA. It's open to partners from the entire island of Ireland, and the priorities in the last program were, again, entrepreneurship, resource efficiencies, risk of natural and climate and human origin, and biodiversity, natural and cultural assets. There's a number of challenges we see there. If you look at the map, obviously Brexit is a huge problem for all these programs that Ireland are involved in. Losing Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. We lose an ally in the management of the program. You know, the focus can be sometimes in this program a little bit Iberian, can be focused on the Spanish, Portuguese, and France can be the kingpin in this program on where the focus goes. But also we lose the cash. The investment into the program from the UK government in the last program made up to a little bit more than 50% of the program. So this program will be smaller and be more focused, I think, into the future. We don't yet know the size of the budget, but in that 185 million euro in the old program was made up of about 50% coming from the UK government. So you know, this is it's a challenging time for the Atlantic Area program. There also is talks of the French and the Spanish having larger, more inland areas involved in the program. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the focus of the program is going to remain very much a maritime-based program, looking at the sea basin strategy, the Atlantic sea basin strategies, and looking at challenges that are of a coastal nature or a maritime nature, and focusing on those. If you just move on to the next slide. The Commission have asked, again, they didn't give percentages in this one, but they asked for, again, P2 being the strongest focus, so the greener agenda, but looking more in depth, looking at investment in ocean and coastal ecosystems, looking at the promotion of CO2 reduction and low carbon strategies for Atlantic Area. They're asking for us to look at investments in cooperation in climate change action, investments in projects that contribute to eco-friendly Atlantic ports. But also a focus on P1 and P5, and again the specific objective number 15. I know I'm eating into my time here, so I'm just going to go on to the next slide. The next slide, I just thought I'd finish off with an example of a good project, or what I consider a good project, that has a focus on the green side of things. So Huge is a project that is funded through the Northern Periphery and Arctic. It's a carbon-based project. It's looking at renewable energy utilization. If you just go on to the next slide. The project is a 1.4 million euro project funded by MPA. What I like about this project is the mix of partnership. First of all, the two Irish partners are NUIG, so you have the academic, but you also have the Aran Islands Energy Association, a voluntary group of people in the Aran Islands. In layman's terms, when this project was being explained to me before the applications were being reviewed by a professor in NUIG, basically on the Aran Islands they have wind turbines. The wind turbines are producing too much energy at certain times and no energy at the other times. They're looking at trying to make the wind turbines and the Aran Islands self-sufficient, energy self-sufficient, and hydrogen be used as a storage mechanism for that. Just moving on to the next slide. The huge project aims to provide communities with energy security and self-sufficiency. It wants to increase the awareness of hydrogen as a viable option for this, and to facilitate the decision-making and implementation of hydrogen solutions for public infrastructure. I have a video, a small video, just to show the project a little bit better than I explained it. I don't know if we have time for that, but if we do, could Catherine please play it? Thanks, Catherine. And the next slide then is me finished. So I just, I suppose this morning was just to give you an overview of the future priorities in all the different programs and a little oversight into where the investments will be available in Northern Periphery and Arctic and Atlantic area in particular. And I'd be really interested in hearing your feedback and looking at the poll that we did earlier on as well at the end of the session. Thanks, everyone.
Brendan, thank you very much for a very interesting and